My name is Abhishek. I built out one of the first consumer-facing account abstraction dApps like ETH Global Tokyo in 2023. Today, I'd like to talk about EIP-7702. So on behalf of EtherSpot, I lead BD and outreach for EIP-7702 across the entire ecosystem. Wanted to use this as a stage, a platform to give everyone an update on what's up with EIP-7702, where we are, and discuss more about it. So now, everyone probably, has a MetaMask wallet. You've used a wallet, trust, anything else. So those wallets are actually EOA wallets, as we all know. The problem with EOA wallets is they're very restrictive in nature. You need a wallet balance, you need a nonce. Another thing is you can only carry out one transaction at a time. So if, let's say, you were doing a delegation swap, you would need two transactions, two different transactions, then you'd need gas and a lot of it without it. So now, as you can see, the biggest problem was that there's no programmable logic, or you cannot write any form of contract logic or have anything associated with a with a EOA basic wallet. And this became a very limiting problem for the entire ecosystem. So 2018, 19, 20, the entire ecosystem spent a lot of time trying to figure out a way around this. Then came ERC 4337. So 4337 account abstraction was pretty simple. It makes sure that you could have account abstraction features without any underlying hard fork changes to the ecosystem. So it introduced something called user operations. So instead of user signing raw transaction data, you could instead sign a user operation. Bundlers would sort of collect as many user operations, badge them, and then pass them on via a entry point smart contract. And then it would go directly into the mempool and then be picked up. So Paymasters also made it easy for anyone, to any dApp, any protocol to sponsor gas on behalf of the user and allow users to have a seamless user experience. So account abstraction via 4337 was a key factor in, simplifying user experience, making sure that users didn't have to manage a lot of transactions or spend time doing gas transactions particularly. So now the biggest problem was that users had to still, needed an EOA to, even if they wanted to create a smart contract account. So with account abstraction, you had something called smart contract accounts which came into the picture. But the biggest problem was they were still directly linked to your EOA, the externally owned account that you had. So of course, a lot of your EOA problems got solved eventually, but you still didn't have answers to all problems in the room. Now then came the big idea. So in May 24, Vitalik tweeted out an idea about EIP-7702. And the basic logic was that what if you could have or in some way enable an EOA wallet or a EOA account to temporarily delegate its logic purely to a certain part of a code or a certain part of another smart contract or anything else for that matter. So with 7702, it became very simple that you could carry out all transactions from your actual EOA wallet. In the case of a smart contract account, because a new wallet was being created, there was a new key pair generated, it would mostly reset all your user data, identity, anything you had with your previous EOA. A lot of people who've been in crypto for a while, you have EOAs that are 7, 8 years old. It gives you a lot of visibility. It also signals a lot of social proof and trust in the ecosystem. With 7702, you could continue using your EOA wallets, but get the advantages of smart contract accounts or anything that was through account abstraction. And the easiest part was it was protocol native, so it didn't need any hard fork, nothing. It was shipped in one of these changes, and it was easily implemented. Pretty simple, EIP-7702 was not difficult to execute. It's very simple for most protocols, dApps, wallets to execute and pass on the advantages to their users. So it introduced a type 4 transaction. So what happened is any EOA could delegate its entire logic, or it could delegate its control temporarily to any third party or a smart contract or any other piece of logic for that matter. Now, it had a very simple execution flow. So once you have delegated it and using one of the delegation codes which were there, once the delegation was complete, it made it very easy for any user to use 7702. So the biggest advantages that came along with 7702 were that you could have all of account abstraction features without making a smart contract account. So whether it was transaction batching, you could still pay gas with your any ERC20 token. You wouldn't need to have ETH or a native gas token for that matter. And social recovery was probably one of the biggest use cases that came into the picture. So anything where you see that you could recover your wallet, you could use another friend, or you could use someone from your family to if you could also enable a dead man switch in your actual account if you wanted to. And one of the most interesting use cases was session keys and anything around AI agent accounts. So the AI part is very new, but session keys have been around for a while. So let's say if you're using a financial DApp or something where you do not want the DApp to have access to, or to your wallet or the smart contract for all time. We've seen that in a lot of cases. We have users who've left access, or the delegate is still there and you lose funds. So eventually with 7702, what you could do is, in one single transaction, you could delegate the logic to a third party, and by the time the transaction would end, you would also have your delegation back. So it made it simple, it made it much more safe and secure. So yeah, EIP-7702, but even before 7702, I think, I'm not sure how many people in this room are aware, but account abstraction was actually supposed to ship out of box when Ethereum launched in 15-16. So when the white paper came out, it actually had account abstraction out of the box. But due to some changes, or there was some delay in the original timeline of shipping a lot of things in the ecosystem. So eventually, account abstraction was something that was pushed down the ladder for the entire ecosystem or the community you come back and revisit later. So it started with EIP-86, then it came to ERC-4337, then we had 7702, and eventually EIP-8141 is where we enable native account abstraction out of the box for the entire ecosystem. So EIP-8141 goes live in, I think, the next or the one after that, the hard fork which is scheduled. So if you ask where are the real-world applications of EIP-7702 today, it's mostly, as I mentioned, one-click approve and swap. So in one single transaction, you could approve, you could swap, and you could also have your delegate back. Probably one of the easiest UX experiences for new, old, and all forms of users. You could give your users a gasless experience. You have session keys, social recovery, multi-sig and spending limits. So, in a lot of cases where you have crypto wallets which hold a significant amount, there are multi-sigs, which enable you to make sure that if it's, let's say, a wallet that's run by a project, a dApp, or some sort of a protocol, you want to have some checks and balances in place. So 7702-based multi-sigs are probably, easier alternatives than anything else right now. So yeah, I think this is the most important slide. If you ask me where we are with 7702, so this is my update eventually. We have a lot of, we have more than 100 million EOAs which are eligible to upgrade via 7702. It went off great, we've had probably, there's a good number, probably around 100K plus delegations through the 7702 logic. And the best part is it builds on top of 4337. So you do not need to, make a lot of underlying changes, nothing. Very simple, easy to implement, probably takes a developer not more than 1 or 2 hours. So in 1 or 2 hours, all your users can have these advantages. One of the biggest problems we've seen with 7702 is, how many times or the number of conversations we've seen that a 7702 delegation has been held responsible for a hack or something. There's a misconception here which is happening is, in such cases where you see that a 7702 delegation has probably led to such a hack, the private key was probably leaked much before. So hackers sort of use 7702 in this case, but it's not actually 7702 which is responsible for the hack, but the keys that were already leaked before. And yeah, we have a lot of early wallet integrations. OKX, MetaMask, ZeroDev kernel, a lot of them have their own implementations also. So it gives both users and protocols and builders the ability to pick and choose what works best for them. Another thing was that when 4337 came around, you had the concept of a mempool where user ops would go in a mempool and then be picked up to be processed. EtherSpot received a grant from the Ethereum Foundation to build censorship-resistant infra for EIP-7702. And that's where the concept of a shared mempool comes in. So without a shared mempool, all your projects, dApps, and protocols would run their own mempools individually. Now, what this would mean is, it would create a lot of privatization. It would also lead to a lot of censorship, where one protocol could, let's say, deny accepting another protocol's transactions or user ops in that mempool. In order to solve this problem, we wanted to have one simple shared mempool for both 4337 and 7702. So that's a shared mempool. So we encourage all projects, wallets, protocols, dApps to actually use a shared mempool and be adhering to the original principles of Ethereum ecosystem. If you ask about what are the challenges that I've faced so far in the outreach I've done, so one is, there's a clear awareness gap which I've seen. I've spoken to more than 100 wallets, 500 dApps, probably more than 1,000 odd builders, and there's a clear gap in their understanding of what 7702 could do and how long it could take for them to implement something like 7702 and then ship it. So the security fact, I think I've already mentioned. This is a misconception, but it doesn't actually exist. As long as the delegated code works well, you wouldn't have to worry about this. Yeah, and so in the end, I think 7702 was always meant to be a stopgap. It was never the final destination. EIP-8141 with native account abstraction is your final destination. And I think Krishang spoke very well about it, so I don't need to go through this again. And yeah, I am here around, happy to have a chat. I think we are running behind on schedule, so I'll not be able to take questions, but I'm around in the room, happy to chat, answer questions, anything around 7702 or account abstraction. Thank you.